Good morning, ma'am. Morning, sir.
Please.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, Ishita. So Ishita, tell us about yourself. What are your interests? What have you done?
So I'm Ishita Kishore. I am a graduate in economics from Sri Ram College of Commerce, Delhi University. After that, I started working with Ernst & Young for 2 years in risk advisory. And thereafter, I started my preparation for the civil services examination. I have played a number of sports like football and basketball, and I have a keen interest in Madhubani painting.
Okay, good, Ishita. You are from SR, you have done BA honors from SRCC,
Yes, sir.
and then you are doing Ernst & Young and risk analysis. Why you want to go for the civil services?
So while I was working, I started evaluating what I wanted to do in the long run, what should be my career plan. And civil services was something that was in my mind, but I felt that this job would give me a number of career opportunities and also some personal satisfaction. I believe that it helps you learn policy implementation in the beginning of the career, and later on from that experience we can move on to some policy advisory, and this really interested me.
But don't you think even this Ernst & Young risk analysis, you will go far?
Yes, sir, it was a great career option and I had a lot of learning in those 2 years over there. But on evaluating what I should do in the longer run, I felt I wanted to move towards the public sector. So my father was also in the Indian Air Force, so somewhere that was lingering in my mind since my childhood. So that's why I chose this.
But do you think that in civil services, do you have control over your career?
Sir, not so much control over the
What
career.
says that what will you do tomorrow or maybe after 3 years?
Sir, not so much control, and I think that is what excites me the most. Across my life, I have had varied interests and I have had a very multidimensional upbringing. So this is what excites me the most about civil services also, that one gets to work across various sectors, various departments, and hone their skills along the way.
Suppose you are selected in IPS, would you like to join that?
Absolutely, sir. I think it would be a great honor to be part of the Indian Police Services, and I would really look forward to a career like that where one gets to work across intelligence agencies, across law and order. So I would love that.
Okay. You have done Indian economy. Tell me, what is the broad size of India's budget? How much do we spend totally? Absolutely, in absolute terms.
So in absolute terms, this year's budget was of 45 lakh crores Indian rupees. And of that, this time we have made a significant move of spending over 10 lakh crores on capital expenditure, which is now 3.3% of our GDP. And this can help in creating a virtuous cycle of growth and increasing the amount of our aggregate pie.
Tell me, out of this 45 lakh crore, what is your income? Revenue? How much is your revenue? How much you borrow?
Sir, out of the 45 lakh crores, I think around 28 lakh crores is our borrowings, but I'm not sure, sir.
You are economist, huh? And macroeconomist.
Yes, sir. So I'll read up about it.
What is the fiscal deficit?
So the fiscal deficit currently is around 6.4% of the GDP, which will bring it around...
All the more a problem, because now you have to understand the GDP also then. How much is the GDP?
So it is $3.2 trillion and 6.2% of that would be a fiscal deficit.
And here you are talking about in rupees, huh? Lakh
Yes,
crore
sir,
rupees.
I understand.
Tell me what the government should do. Suppose you are saying that you are spending about 45 lakh crore. What is the broad, suppose you are given charge of this 100 rupees is given. First of all, tell me what does government, what should be the priority of the government, let's see. What should be the first rupee you will spend?
So I'll just take a moment.
Sure.
So I think once the government has 100 rupees, for example, first thing would be to efficiently run its house, which is the expenditures and day-to-day expenses in getting things done. And our priority then would be to invest the remaining portion in a way that can bring more gains in the future. So even in the current budget, out of 45 lakh crores, 35 lakh crores are our revenue expenditure, which is spent on the expenses of the government and expenditure, and 10 lakh crores are then invested and plowed in a way that it can bring more returns in the future.
But what is the your sums up very quietly in 30 lakh crore, 35 lakh crore. But what is this? This must be out of this 100 rupees. It's almost like you are saying 35 out of 45. So you said the 70, like basically 70% is day to day. What is that 70%? What is the government expenditure, for example, out of this 100 rupees? How much is the expenditure on let's say, what should be the priorities of the government? Forget about what is there, what the current government does, or what should be the priority?
So to keep India running, we have to ensure that firstly our defense is ensured. Around 8% of our budget goes into defense spending. Secondly, sir, we should also ensure that public utilities and public infrastructure is in place. This would include all our power sector and everything that is running the economy of the government. And thirdly, sir, as we are a welfare state, third expenditure would be to ensure that welfare reaches to the last mile. So that would be the third expenditure.
Tell me, what about expenditure on police? Is it required?
Yes, sir, it is required.
That's the first thing one should do it, no?
Yes, sir, between defense, it would also be our internal security as well as external security.
But that is how your basic things are there.
Yes, sir.
Then only you can talk about development.
Yes, sir.
Unless you are secure, life is most important.
Yes, sir.
Do you know that how much, like for example, you are saying is that, for example, you take it health sector. Do you think the government should spend on this AIMS or specialized education system or specialized treatment? Why should the government do that, or it should be just left to the private sector?
Sir, I think the government should spend on health as well as specialized education, both because, sir, I truly resonate with the ideas of Amartya Sen. In his capability approach, he had said that the development of the population and the well-being of the population is our strongest suit, and this can help in fueling our growth in the future. A healthy population, a well-educated population will turn out to be a great asset for us in the long run.
But do you think that this for majority of people, you don't require tertiary education, cancer treatment, let the government should not invest it. If some rich person dies of cancer, let he himself should take care of. Why the government should take care of? The government should take care about the things which are bothered to the majority of the population, poor persons. Don't you think so? Why should we spend on AIMS and all that? And majority of population suffers from diseases, very common diseases, that not good drinking water, sanitation. That is not there. Government should spend money on that.
Sir, I agree that catering to the needs of the larger population and the majority of the people under various schemes like food security, ensuring better health facilities and primary health care should be a policy priority. But sir, it is always beneficial to invest in tertiary healthcare also. Cancer is not limited to only the rich. Cancer may be, or for example, diseases like tuberculosis. These are also prevalent in other sections of society, and heavy research and development can help us in tackling the situation.
Thank you.
Thank you. How are you doing? Ma'am, I'm doing well. Thank you.
Relaxed, enjoying your interview?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. You mentioned that you had a multi-dimensional upbringing. What does that mean?
Ma'am, right from the very beginning, I had started my life in sports with taekwondo, and later on I started playing football and basketball. So I have played quite a number of sports across my school life. Apart from that, ma'am, in college I explored this new side of me, which was participating in cultural activities, and I was leading the Commerce Society in college, and we organized India's largest undergraduate commerce festival. So that was a new experience that I had. And ma'am, lastly, I also had the experience to travel abroad. I represented India as part of the Indo-China Youth Delegation of Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, and this also added a dimension to the upbringing part.
Okay. So where all did you go when you were part of the delegation?
Ma'am, first we went to Beijing, and then we went to Hefei. It is a small city in Anhui province, and we ended the journey in Shanghai.
You went to Shanghai also?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So, when you went to China, did it match your impressions about China, or were you surprised pleasantly or otherwise?
Ma'am, I was surprised by quite a few things. Firstly, the soft power of Bollywood in China is very high. All the Chinese youth over there knew Amir Khan and his famous movie Dangal. That was a pleasant surprise. Secondly, ma'am, I was surprised by the kind of infrastructure in Beijing specifically, and the large buildings. So it is something for India to learn from them. And thirdly, ma'am, another interesting point was that so far we often read in newspapers about the Chinese, but over there it sort of humanized my interaction with them. Suddenly our rivals were a human being on the other side, and I think this kind of soft power among the youth can go a long way.
But now things seem to have completely soured, right? So why has it soured, and what positions are the two countries taking on the China issue? What are the Chinese saying, and what is the Indian government saying?
Ma'am, some points of disagreements are there. For example, the LAC issue between India and China. And at the Astana consensus, both countries had agreed that we should not let our disagreements become disputes, and there should be proper channels of communication between both sides, and that is ongoing at the LAC. Secondly, ma'am, India with respect to China has had a positive approach also. India has engaged with China on multiple forums like BRICS, SCO, and this is helping the global world order, the global economic order to be led by the Asian countries now. So it can bring in an Asian century in the economic sense.
Is it really possible? Because there is general deep distrust of China now. I mean, in cutting across countries, and the way they have reacted to the way they have acted on our borders has been a warning signal for everybody else. And it is famously, I mean, you look at China-Australia relations. So really, is there a meeting ground possible?
Ma'am, China is our neighbor, and that is a reality for us. And there has to be optimism in our approach, because it is sine qua non to us to have a meeting ground with them, because otherwise it will be a very difficult scenario at the borders and now in the Indian Ocean as well, as China is expanding across various ports. So as far as the global response to China's various moves is concerned, India will be valid if India remains vigilant in its approach towards China, and India with its quadrilateral security dialogue and free and open Indo-Pacific approach can collaborate with other members in the world to help tackle an aggressive China.
But isn't India in a very unique position? Other people say things about China, but in our case, they are right there in the border looking us in the eye.
Yes, ma'am.
So, will our position ever match the position of our partners?
Ma'am, our position should match the position of our partners, because only then we can avoid the threat of a two-front war, especially in our northern borders, and now also from the maritime side. So we are upping up our position. There has been development by the Border Roads Organization. We have also developed an airbase in Oli in Himachal Pradesh. And India needs to up its position because, as rightly pointed out, India's situation is very different from that of the other members in the world, other countries in the world. So investment in defense infrastructure and matching the level of our rivals will go a long way in balancing the calculus.
What is the Indo-Pacific idea, and why does China not accept it and criticize it?
Ma'am, the idea of a free and open Indo-Pacific was first given by Shinzo Abe, the former leader of Japan, and this was to create free and open sea lines of communication across the Indian Ocean, because significant amount of trade happens in this area. And at the Shangri-La Dialogue, India had expanded this to free, open and inclusive Indo-Pacific region, showcasing to the world that it is not an exclusive architecture, it is inclusive of all the members in the region. But China believes this to be an artificial construct, and China feels that this can be a threat, and it has also labeled the Quad dialogue in the Indo-Pacific as the Asian NATO. But India has taken steps to counter China's concerns.
So one of the G7 countries has come up with the Indo-Pacific strategy recently. Which is that country?
Ma'am, I think it is France.
France came out very early.
Okay.
It's Canada.
Canada. Yes,
So why is it significant? Why are we talking so much about it?
ma'am, it is very important to us because it is our neighborhood, and India's ability to emerge as a global power and an important power in the world depends on its ability to manage its neighborhood. So the involvement of countries like Canada, countries like France, G7, the most powerful developed economies in the world, it will be a boon to India and will be a force multiplier for India.
So since we're talking about G7, Japan was in the news recently. Why? What have they done which is so significant, which everybody is talking about?
Ma'am, I think they have a plan to double their defense budget in the next few years, and that has been a significant change in Japan.
If they come out with policies.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Ishita, comfortable?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What's the literal meaning of Ishita?
Sir, my mother named me Ishita because it is another name of goddess Durga.
Okay. And your optional subject is PS or PSIR?
Yes.
Okay. So can you explain the theory of justice of Rawls?
So John Rawls had given his theory of justice in 1971, and at a time when the discipline of political science was witnessing a decline, John Rawls had revived the subject with his theory of justice because he brought back the core values of political science back into the discipline. And at the time when civil rights movements and wide-scale protests were going on, his theory of justice involved a reflexive equilibrium, and it involved in ensuring rights for the people.
Okay. How it differs with the Aristotelian theory of justice?
Sorry, sir?
Aristotelian theory of justice? How it differs with?
So from what I can recall right now, Aristotle's theory of justice was about reasonable differentiation in the society, and it was about ensuring that whoever contributes and whichever section of the ensuring just allocation of resources in the society for
Okay,
Aristotle.
okay. Marx has converted the idealistic dialectics of Hegel into materialistic one, right?
Yes, sir.
How?
So Hegel had given an idealistic interpretation of history, but Marx believed that it is not ideas, but rather it is materials that have been the wheels of history and moved history. And he said that it is the economy is the basic structure of any society, and material and matter are the moving force of history.
Correct. And so what is social justice?
So social justice ensures that justice prevails in an entire society among all the members. So that is all I can say.
Okay, all right. Ishita, your hobby is Madhubani painting, right? What are the classical features of your Madhubani painting?
So Madhubani painting are of 5 types, and in all types we see striking geometrical patterns across the paintings. We also see that the canvas is fully, every inch of the canvas is filled with some design, and it is based either on themes of nature or on mythological themes.
Okay, and how it differs with Rajasthani painting?
So Rajasthani paintings, I can recall of Banithani painting right now and the Marwar school. Sir, Madhubani painting focuses on geometric patterns and has thick borders and they are very intricate in nature compared to Rajasthani paintings.
Correct. In your Madhubani painting, there is certain paintings of animals. What are these animals?
Sir, every animal has some significance when they are painted. For example, fish is considered to ward off the evil eye. There are also snakes and so that's all I can do.
Okay. And what are the animals which are being painted in your Rajasthani painting?
So I don't know about Rajasthani paintings.
Okay. So, Ishita, you have been working as a risk analyst. What is risk analyst?
Sir, in risk analysis, the clients of Ernst & Young come to them with their various business processes, for example, the production process or the supply chains, and we highlight the risks in that particular process. For example, who is the issuing authority, whose signatures are required for a particular transaction, and we help in plugging those risks.
Okay. Ishita, as earlier you have said that, you described the basic, different various facets of your personality, and you have been playing different various kinds of game, and now, so that reflects it's a versatile personality. But my question is, you look so tender and, so immature. Despite that you have, completed a graduation in 2017, right? So tell me, what are 3 main traits one should have to be a civil servant?
So the first trait should be a high level of integrity, because this is a position of responsibility and this is an office of trust. A number of decisions are dependent on this office, so that is the first thing. So second thing, I believe versatility and the ability to quickly learn new things up to a respectable standard is very important, because a civil servant is required to deliver results in a given amount of time. And thirdly, sir, I think having good team skills are very important, because a civil servant does not work in isolation. A civil servant works under a hierarchy and along with a number of parallel offices. So having a good team spirit and teamwork can go a long way.
Right, well answered. So